Follow us on Twitter at ghettoplex_MP4, on Instagram at ghettoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at ghettoplex. So Beetlejuice, the sequel to Beetlejuice, is coming out in a few days, so I decided, let me rewatch the first one so the original is fresh in my mind. If you haven't watched the movie yet, it's been over 30 years, so I'm going to get into spoilers real soon. But to sum it up, if you haven't seen it, Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis are a couple, and they suffer from an unexpected death and end up as ghosts trapped in their house, unable to leave. They can only exist in their home. However, a problem arises when the Dietzes, this new family, moves in to their home. And the main objective for Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis is to scare away this new family. In a nutshell, that's the story. This couple who originally lived in this house want to get rid of the new family who are now occupying the house since they died and a new family moved in. And they seek the help of Beetlejuice to help remove the family. That's a lot. That would be like a synopsis for you if you haven't seen the movie. Now, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Come back here for spoilers. Okay, so let's get into some details here. Adam and Barbara are on vacation, and they constantly struggle with this woman who lives local to them in their town, and she's constantly trying to get them to sell their own house for some reason. She's like a real estate person, so I guess she's just constantly trying to sell homes in this little town they live in, which is hilarious because towards the end, she comes back to the new family trying to sell the house from them. So she's constantly it's like there's only so many houses in this small town, and it seems like she's just cycling through them trying to sell the houses constantly from whoever lives in this small town. But anyways, Adam and Barbara they're trying to have a family of their own. It shows in the beginning of the movie they want to have their own baby, and apparently they're having like some fertility issues. But they end up dying by trying to dodge a dog while getting back home, and they drive off of a bridge into the river. I would have just ran over the dog, to be honest. But upon dying and returning home, things become very vivid and surreal as they come to the realization that they are in fact dead. And they come across this handbook for the recently deceased, and this book jumps from person to person throughout this house. The immediate change in the atmosphere of their home from when they're alive to when they're dead it's one of those Tim Burton things where it's so nightmarish and dreamy. I really love that Tim Burton is just so good at world building. He's, other than like the Willy Wonka movies and some of the Sweeney Todd, but some of his movies after he got away from the practical effects and did a lot more CGI, his movies, when he focused a lot on the practical effects, just have this very signature look to them. And I really admired that about Tim Burton's films, like, Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, Sleepy Hollow, Mars Attacks, the 2 Batman films that he made. He's just really good at creating these larger than life worlds. And obviously there's CGI in some of his older films, but it was very minimal. Anyway, so the new family moves in, the Dietzes, and Adam and Barbara try to use a bunch of ghost tricks to remove the family, and a lot of fun happens there, even more with the practical effects and the continuous world building, especially when they go to basically the DMV of death to get help from their caseworker. Every time they leave their house too, like if they leave and they exit the home and they end up in that dune land with the Tim Burton Shai Hulud worm, time just changes rapidly. It passes by rapidly. So anytime they leave the house, time just flies by. But anyways, yeah, so they find out about Beetlejuice. They go to the DMV of death, and they're seeking help from basically everyone to remove the family from the house, even Lydia, who they become close with because Lydia is the first person to actually see them because they're ghosts. So no one sees them until Lydia, because Lydia, according to the handbook of the recently deceased, because she is strange and unusual, she has the ability to see them. So they communicate with her, and they basically build a relationship with her, and they become fond of each other. Lydia likes them and they like Lydia. So they seek Lydia's help to try to get the family to leave. And the family, once they become aware that they are in fact ghosts occupying the house, they try to turn the house into an attraction, like a paranormal attraction. And well, not Lydia, but her parents, her dad and her mom, and they contact their yuppie friends from New York. And they want to turn the house they live in into this paranormal ghost attraction. But Adam and Barbara, they just want to live in peace in in their own house. They just want to live, happily ever after, dead in their homes as ghosts. And they make it kind of clear too. They're like, you know what, we don't mind having guests. We just want guests that we can live with, that we can stand, that we're not annoyed by, or we're not, we don't have any animosity towards. But well, since Lydia, she does what she can, but obviously, her parents are set in their ways. What her dad, and then Catherine O'Hara, she plays the stepmom. So they're set in their ways, and they're basically set on making the house an attraction. They want to do whatever it takes. And because Lydia is the first person to actually be able to communicate with them, the ghosts, her parents are trying to have her be like this circus commander to summon these ghosts for their guests to entertain them. It's hilarious because they have their first attempts, the couple, Adam and Barbara, they have their first attempts to try to scare the couple out by wearing bed sheets and looking like some goofy ghosts. And they try some other ghost tricks to try to scare the family away, but none of them work until eventually the family has over some friends from New York. And this is initially where they find out that there's ghosts in their house because they have this choreographed possession at the dinner table. It's just it's such a memorable scene here that they created when they have their biggest attempt to scare away the family because they have guests over. So their plan is to scare the family and the guests away by possessing them for a moment during their dinner. But it's such an amusing choreography. It's just one of those things where if you were possessed in such a way, it would almost feel like you were on some kind of psychedelic drugs, which is why I thought, yeah, that wouldn't really scare me if I was in that choreographed dinner possession, because it seems so surreal and psychedelic that I could see more people wanting to come back or come over or experience that phenomenon for themselves. But anyways, yeah, so they try to use Lydia as this ghost commander. And when she refuses, they use their friend Otho, I forget his name, but the flaming interior designer, because he has some paranormal experience as well. And he also gets his hands on that book for the recently deceased. And he summons them when Lydia refuses to turn them into an attraction for the guests. However, this exorcism he's performing will kill them, because as they went to the DMV of death, they come across this door with a bunch of ghosts that look like dead ghosts. Like, your ghosts are already dead, but they look like the dead version of dead people. And that is where you go when you've been exorcised from your house. So when Ortho summons them, he's basically performing an exorcism that's going to kill them. He's going to turn the ghosts into like ghosts squared, like times 2, which kind of leaves Lydia with no other option but to ask for Beetlejuice's help, which for some reason throughout the film, especially at the DMV of death, people are like, do not summon Beetlejuice. He is trouble. And they don't really go into very specific detail as to why he's so bad. They just say he's a menace. But he's like such a class clown. It's kind of hard to see what is so threatening about him. But, Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice, he's just so perfect as this larger than life dead clown. I don't know what the hell he's supposed to be. He's like this, the way he performs the character, he comes off as, and he says in the film himself, he's been dead for a long time. So you could tell he has his own motive. He basically wants to escape from death and go back to the living world. So when Lydia approaches him for help to save Adam and Barbara, he says, and for some reason this is not clear either, but he says, if you marry me, I can get my freedom and I will save Adam and Barbara. And it's not clear as to why he needs to marry her either. I don't know. They don't go over that in the book of recently deceased. But for some reason, that seems to be his motivation. He's like, look, if we get hitched, I get free. I can get back to the real world where there's people I need to meet up with, and you can get your Adam and Barbara back. So they strike a deal. And for some reason, Adam and Barbara don't want that to happen. And when they're getting married too, Michael Keaton is so hilarious. Or Beetlejuice, whatever. Michael Juice, Beetle Keaton. He's so animated. He's just so excited to finally have this opportunity to become free. He's like, every time someone's about to say his name during the marriage ceremony, you're like, do you, Beetlejuice, take Lydia? And he's just like, don't say the name. It's not clear why he can't say his own name, and why, if you just say his name at least once during like a marriage ceremony, what trouble will that cause for him? But yeah, it's never clear why is Beetlejuice a bad guy? Like, why is he the antagonist, I guess? When you summon him as an exorcist, he's basically going to do bad things to get rid of people from the house, but that's kind of his job. It's not like it's not like he's exorcising the living from houses because he wants to. It's just because that's his job. He's good at doing it. It's like hiring a professional to get rid of, pests in your home. So I don't understand why Beetlejuice was like the villain or the antagonist of the film. He was literally just a guy doing his job. It's it's a little confusing. In the end, though, after they get rid of Beetlejuice with the Shai-Hulud sandworm, the Dietz family abandoned the idea of turning the Adam and Barbara into an attraction, and they all become one big family. It's a very wholesome ending. It's one of those really feel-good endings where you're like, oh, you know, it kind of worked out for everybody except for Beetlejuice. And then there's that iconic song at the end, "Jump the Line." It's funny because when I used to DJ at a lot of events, there was this Be More remix of "Jump the Line" that I used to love playing, and people who were Tim Burton fans would lose their shit when I would play it. So just hearing that song, it brings back some good memories from the electronic days. There's also on YouTube, if you look for it, there's an alternate ending in the film. So the original ending, it's not so different. The only thing that changes is that you see once again the woman from the beginning of the movie who's trying to constantly sell houses. She talks to Lydia as she's on her way home and then calls the parents to try to sell the house again from them this time. And you don't hear the father, like the father answers the phone and denies the requests, him and his wife. But you don't see him like in the traditional ending. He hears the song and dance music playing, and then he's like, "Oh, Lydia got an A in her whatever, in her report card." So it's just a small change. It literally changes from you seeing the woman try to sell the house again to you seeing the father hearing that his daughter got an A in her report card because you can hear the song and dance number playing that she was promised from Adam and Barbara if she got good grades or something like that. But yeah, rewatching the movie was really fun. I had a lot of fun rewatching it. And I remember there was a cartoon when I was younger, a Beetlejuice cartoon. I don't really remember any of the episodes. I do remember watching it. So technically there has already been a sequel to Beetlejuice, which was in the form of the cartoon, the animated cartoon. But this week I will go and watch the sequel, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, and I'm sure they'll make a trilogy and just call it Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. And I hope it's as fun and wholesome as the original. But anyways, that is the end of the review here for the first Beetlejuice movie. Let me know if you rewatched the first one before watching the sequel, and what did you think? Follow us on Twitter at Getoplex_MP4, on Instagram at Getoplex.mp4, and on YouTube at Getoplex. See you guys on the next one.